I never thought I'd have to rent a car to escape my own son's betrayal. But there I was, 72 years old, 12 hours post-surgery, my abdomen still burning from the gallbladder removal, standing at the enterprise counter with trembling hands and a heart that felt like it had been carved out along with that organ. Let me back up. You need to understand how I got there. The surgery had gone well, or so the nurses told me. I woke up in that sterile recovery room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, my mouth dry as sandpaper, and my first thought was of Malcolm. My son. The boy I'd raised, sacrificed everything for, loved with every fiber of my being. He'd promised to pick me up. "Don't worry, Mom," he'd said the night before. "I'll be there. 2 o'clock sharp." I believed him. But before I tell you what happened next, before I take you down this road that changed everything, I want to pause here. I'm so glad you're here with me. If you're watching this, please take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel. And I need you to tell me something in the comments. Where are you hearing my story from? What city, what country? I want to know how far this tale of revenge has traveled, because what happened to me could happen to anyone. Your voice in the comments reminds me I'm not alone. That none of us are. Now where was I? Yes, the phone calls. The first call came at 2:47 p.m. I was dressed, well, as dressed as you can be when you're wearing the same clothes you wore in because they wouldn't let you wear anything with metal during the procedure. My friend Dorothy had taken me to the hospital that morning because Malcolm said he had an important meeting he couldn't reschedule. I understood. He was a busy man, my Malcolm. An investment consultant. Important. "Hi, honey," I said when he answered, trying to keep my voice steady despite the pain radiating through my middle. "I'm ready whenever you are. They're discharging me now." There was a pause. Then, "Mom, I can't make it." Just like that. No apology in his voice. No concern. Flat. Matter of fact. "What?" "But Malcolm, you promised." "Something came up. You'll have to figure it out." "Figure it out?" My voice cracked. "Sweetheart, I just had surgery. I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to?" "I don't know, Mom. Call an Uber or something." And he hung up. I stared at my phone like it was an artifact from another planet. Surely I'd heard wrong. Surely my son, my Malcolm, who I'd raised to be kind, to be responsible, hadn't just abandoned me at a hospital. 20 minutes later, after sitting in the discharge waiting area feeling like I might vomit from the anesthesia still swimming in my system, I called again. "Malcolm, please. I really need you. I don't know how to use Uber and I'm not feeling well enough to." "Jesus, Mom." His voice was sharp now, irritated. "I told you I can't come. Stop calling me." In the background I heard her. "Araya. My daughter-in-law." That high-pitched giggle that I'd once thought was charming when Malcolm first brought her home 5 years ago. Now it sounded like glass breaking. "Is she still calling?" Araya's voice gleeful. "Tell her to take the bus." They laughed. Both of them. I heard them laughing at me while I stood there, 72 years old, doubled over in pain, fresh stitches in my belly. Third call, 3:30 p.m. "Malcolm, I'm begging you." "Stop calling me." Fourth call, 4:15 p.m. He didn't even answer. It went straight to voicemail. Fifth call, 5:02 p.m. I was crying now, which I'm not proud of, but the pain was getting worse and the nurses were giving me looks that said I needed to leave because they needed the bed. "Please, baby. Please just come get your mother. I'm in so much pain." "You know what?" Malcolm's voice was cold now. Ice cold. "You're pathetic. Always needing something, always helpless. Maybe this will teach you to be more independent." "Malcolm, grow up, Mom." And in the background, clearer than before, I heard Araya. "Tell her we're busy redecorating her room. She's gonna love it." More laughter. Then silence. He'd hung up again. I stood there in that hospital corridor, phone clutched in my hand and something inside me, Something that had been bending and bending under the weight of their treatment for months, finally cracked. Not broke. Cracked. There's a difference. The nurse approached me gently. Mrs. Freeman? Do you have someone coming? No, I whispered. No, I don't. Is there anyone else we can call? A friend? A neighbor? I thought of Dorothy, but she was 3 hours away visiting her daughter. I thought of my old friends from Philadelphia, but I'd lost touch with so many after Robert died, after I moved to Vermont to be closer to Malcolm because he said he wanted me near, that he'd take care of me in my old age. I'll manage, I said. And I did. The hospital social worker helped me arrange a rental car. They weren't happy about it. Apparently, it's not recommended to drive yourself home after surgery. But what choice did I have? I signed the waiver, took my pain medication, and somehow made it to the Enterprise down the street. The young man at the counter looked concerned when I winced climbing into the driver's seat of that silver Toyota Camry. Ma'am, are you sure you're okay to drive? I'm fine, I lied. The drive home was 43 minutes of pure hell. Every bump in the road sent lightning through my abdomen. Every turn made me clutch the steering wheel tighter. I drove with my seat reclined as far back as I could while still reaching the pedals, tears streaming down my face, jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. All I could think was, he'll feel terrible when he sees me. He'll apologize. This is just stress from work. He's not himself. I was making excuses for him. Even then, even after everything, I was defending my son in my own mind. I pulled into the driveway of the Vermont house, my house, the one Robert and I had bought together, the one with the wraparound porch and the maple trees, at 6:34 p.m. The sun was starting to set, painting everything in orange and gold. Malcolm's car was there. Araya's SUV too. They were home. Relief flooded through me. Maybe they'd felt guilty. Maybe they were inside making dinner, preparing my room, ready to help me up the stairs. I struggled out of the rental car, every movement agony, and made my way up the porch steps, using the railing for support. My hand was shaking when I reached for the doorknob. It wouldn't turn. I tried again. Locked. Strange. We never locked the door during the day when people were home. I knocked. Malcolm? Araya? It's me. Can you let me in? Nothing. I knocked harder, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. Hello? I'm home. Then I saw her. Araya's face appeared in the front window, the big bay window where I used to sit and do my sewing, where I'd made Malcolm's Halloween costumes when he was little, where I'd hemmed Robert's pants and altered wedding dresses for half the women in town. She was smiling. Not a friendly smile. A different kind entirely. Our eyes met through the glass, and she tilted her head slowly, deliberately. Then she reached up and pulled the curtain closed. Araya! I pounded on the door now, panic rising in my chest. Araya, open the door. This is my house. I heard footsteps. Malcolm appeared at the window briefly, looked right at me, and walked away. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called him again. Through the door, I heard his phone ring inside. He answered. Malcolm, I'm outside. Let me in. Can't do that, Mom. What do you mean you can't? This is my house. Actually, his voice was casual, like we were discussing the weather. We changed the locks. You don't live here anymore. The world tilted. What? You heard me. We're done taking care of you. Find somewhere else to go. Malcolm, I just had surgery. I need to lie down. I need my medication. Should have thought of that before you became such a burden. The phone went dead. I stood there on my own porch, locked out of my own home, my body screaming in pain, the evening chill starting to seep through my thin jacket. Through the window, I could see movement inside. They were walking around, living their lives in my house. The house where I'd raised Malcolm. The house Robert and I had saved for, paid off, protected. I sank down onto the porch step because standing was too much, and I let myself cry. Not the delicate tears from the hospital. Real, gut-wrenching sobs that made my incisions burn and my whole body shake. How had I gotten here? How had the little boy who used to climb into my lap and tell me I was the best mama in the world become this stranger who could lock me out without a second thought? But standing on that porch, no, sitting on that porch because I was too weak to stand, locked out of my own home, I had no idea this was just the beginning. I had no idea that this moment, this betrayal, would lead to discoveries so much worse. And I certainly had no idea that within a few months I would take everything back. I need you to understand who I was before all of this. Not the broken woman sobbing on her own porch, but the woman I'd spent a lifetime becoming. My name is Cynthia Freeman, and for 37 years I ran the finest custom tailoring shop in South Philadelphia. Cynthia's Custom Creations, right on Passyunk Avenue, sandwiched between a bakery that made the best cannoli you've ever tasted and a barber shop where old Italian men argued about the Phillies every Saturday morning. That shop was my kingdom, my sanctuary, my pride. I could take a woman who'd never felt beautiful and make her a dress that would make her weep when she saw herself in the mirror. I could fix a hem so perfectly you'd never know it had been altered. I specialized in wedding dresses and formal wear, but I'd also fix your work pants or take in your daughter's prom dress. Everyone was welcome at Cynthia's. The shop had exposed brick walls that I'd painted cream, hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, and 3 industrial sewing machines that hummed like they were singing. My cutting table was 8 feet long, solid oak, worn smooth by decades of fabric and measuring tapes. I had a brass bell over the door that chimed whenever someone entered, and a vinyl record player that spun Motown and jazz while I worked. I was good at what I did. Really good. Brides would book me a year in advance. I had a waiting list. But more than that, I loved it. Every stitch, every fitting, every satisfied customer who walked out wearing something that made them feel like the best version of themselves. That was my art. That was my contribution to the world. I met Robert Freeman in 1971 at a friend's dinner party. He was a high school English teacher with thick-rimmed glasses, gentle hands, and a laugh that filled up entire rooms. He taught at South Philadelphia High, and he talked about his students the way I talked about my dresses, with absolute devotion. Our first date was a walk through Fairmount Park. He brought a thermos of hot chocolate even though it was April and not that cold, just because he wanted to be prepared in case I got chilly. That's who Robert was. Prepared. Thoughtful. Kind of man who remembered things. We were married 8 months later in a small ceremony. I made my own wedding dress, of course, ivory silk with long sleeves and pearl buttons down the back. Robert cried when he saw me coming down the aisle. Actually cried. He told me later that he'd never seen anything so beautiful, and I believed him because Robert didn't lie. We wanted children right away, but it took 7 years. 7 long years of hoping and disappointment and medical appointments that went nowhere. I'd almost given up when I finally got pregnant at 34 years old. Malcolm Robert Freeman was born on a snowy Tuesday in February 1979, weighing 7 pounds 3 ounces with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the entire maternity ward. He was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'd never loved anything the way I loved that baby. Not my shop, not my craft, not even myself. Being Malcolm's mother became my greatest joy and my greatest purpose. Robert and I raised him in our little row home in South Philly, 3 blocks from my shop. Malcolm grew up in that store, playing on the floor with spools of thread, napping in a playpen next to my cutting table, doing his homework in the back room while I finished alterations. He was sweet and curious, always asking questions, always wanting to help. Mama, can I thread the needle? Mama, why do you pin it that way? Mama, teach me how to measure. I taught him everything. How to recognize quality fabric, how to appreciate craftsmanship, the value of hard work. Robert taught him to read before kindergarten and instilled in him a love of learning that made us both so proud. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. The shop did well enough. Robert's teacher salary was steady. We had everything we needed and most of what we wanted. Then Malcolm got into Wharton. The University of Pennsylvania, one of the best business schools in the country. We were ecstatic. Our brilliant boy, going to an Ivy League school. The financial aid package covered most of it, but there was still a gap. $23,000 that first year. We had some savings, but not enough. Not nearly enough. I'll never forget the night Robert and I sat at our kitchen table, going over the numbers again and again, trying to make the math work differently. Malcolm was upstairs, 18 years old and terrified we'd tell him he couldn't go. "We'll figure it out," Robert kept saying. "We always do. We'll take out loans. I can tutor on the side. You can take on more clients." But we both knew those solutions wouldn't be fast enough or substantial enough. That's when I looked down at my left hand. At the engagement ring Robert had given me 20 years earlier, a half-carat diamond in a white gold setting. Not huge, not flashy, but precious. He'd saved for 8 months to buy it. "No way," Robert said when he saw me looking at it. "Cynthia, absolutely not." "It's just a ring," I told him, though we both knew that was a lie. "It's not just anything," he said quietly. "That's our history. That's us. And he's our future," I whispered back. We sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, Robert took my hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed my knuckles right above that ring. "You're the strongest person I know," he said. I sold it the next day. Got $11,000 for it. Combined with what we had saved and a small loan, it was enough. Malcolm cried when we told him. He promised he'd make us proud, that he'd pay us back someday, that this sacrifice wouldn't be for nothing. And for a while it seemed like it wasn't. He excelled at Wharton, graduated with honors, landed a good job in investment consulting. He met Araya during his senior year, a striking woman with ambitions that matched his own. They married 2 years after graduation in a beautiful ceremony that I helped plan and paid for most of. I was happy for him. Truly happy. Robert and I were planning our retirement. We'd bought the Vermont property when Malcolm was in college, a beautiful old house with good bones that we'd fixed up slowly over the years. Robert had always wanted to retire somewhere quiet, somewhere with seasons and space and peace. "This is where we'll grow old together," he told me, standing on that wraparound porch, looking out at the maple trees. "Just you and me, CYN. We've earned it." But Robert got sick before we could make the move permanent. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. 7 months from diagnosis to death. I closed the shop to take care of him. 37 years of business, and I walked away without hesitation because Robert needed me. We spent his final months in that Philadelphia row home, surrounded by memories and love and the sound of his favorite jazz records playing softly. He died on a Tuesday morning in October, holding my hand with autumn light streaming through the bedroom window. After the funeral, after the overwhelming silence of being alone, Malcolm suggested I move to Vermont permanently. To the house Robert had loved so much. "Come stay with us, Ma," he'd said, putting his arm around me at the burial. "We have plenty of room. You shouldn't be alone. Dad would want us to take care of you." Seemed like such a loving gesture. Such a kind offer. Araya had smiled and nodded, saying all the right things about family and togetherness. I thought I was blessed. I thought my son was stepping up to honor his father's memory by caring for his widow. So I sold the row home. Sold the shop to a young seamstress I'd been mentoring. Packed up 40 years of my life and moved to Vermont to be close to my son. The first few months were fine. Pleasant, even. Malcolm and Araya lived in a modern condo in Burlington, and I settled into the Vermont house, technically mine per Robert's will with legal provisions his lawyer had insisted on. Robert had been adamant about that. "This house stays yours, Cynthia," he made me promise. "I don't care what happens. This is your security." At the time, I'd thought he was just being overly cautious. Malcolm and Araya visited often. We had Sunday dinners. I taught Araya some of my recipes. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed like family. Then, about 8 months ago, they asked if they could move into the Vermont house with me. Our lease is up, Malcolm explained. Housing market's crazy right now. It would help us save for a down payment if we stayed with you for a while. Just temporary, Ma. 6 months, tops. Looking back now, I can see the first warning sign was how quickly Araya started rearranging things. My sewing room became her home office. My collection of Robert's books got boxed up to make space. My photos on the mantel were replaced with their wedding pictures and modern art I didn't understand. We're just updating things, Cynthia, Araya would say with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. Making it feel fresh. You don't mind, do you? And I didn't say anything. 'Cause they were family. 'Cause Malcolm was my son. Because I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. I ignored the signs. The way Araya rolled her eyes when I spoke. The way Malcolm stopped asking about my day. The way they'd whisper and go silent when I entered rooms. I told myself I was being paranoid. Oversensitive. That grief was making me see problems where there weren't any. I was wrong about that too. It started with small things. Things so small I felt foolish even noticing them. My favorite armchair, the burgundy velvet one Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary, disappeared from the living room one Tuesday while I was at the grocery store. When I asked about it, Araya looked at me like I'd asked something ridiculous. That old thing, she said, waving her hand dismissively. It clashed with everything, Cynthia. I donated it to Goodwill. You should be thanking me for decluttering. But that was mine, I said quietly. That was Robert's gift. Well, Robert's gone now, she said, turning back to her laptop. Time to move forward, don't you think? Malcolm said nothing. He was sitting right there on the couch, scrolling through his phone, acting like he hadn't heard a word. The week after that, my sewing machine vanished from the spare room, the room that used to be my workspace, where I'd set up a small studio to keep doing alterations for a few local clients. I found it shoved in the basement, covered with a tarp and surrounded by boxes. We needed that space, Araya explained when I confronted her. I'm starting a consulting business from home. That room has the best light and the strongest Wi-Fi signal. You understand, right? It's important for our future. But my work. What work? She laughed, actually laughed. Cynthia, you're 72 years old. You're retired now. You don't need to work anymore. Just relax and enjoy yourself. Except I couldn't relax. Not when pieces of my life kept disappearing. My photo albums, carefully organized decades of memories, were packed away because they were taking up too much shelf space. My dishes, the china pattern I'd collected piece by piece over 40 years, were replaced with Araya's modern minimalist white plates. My spice rack, arranged exactly how I liked it, was thrown out entirely. Everything was expired, Araya said with that tight smile. I'm doing you a favor, really. Old people don't realize when things go bad. Old people. She'd started calling me that. Not to my face exactly, but I heard her on the phone with her friends. The old woman wants us to ask permission before we rearrange her own house, she'd say, and I could hear the mockery in her tone. Like it's some kind of museum. Malcolm's mother is exhausting, honestly. So stuck in the past. I tried talking to Malcolm about it. Tried catching him alone, but he was never available. Always on his phone, always heading out for a meeting, always too busy to have a real conversation. One evening, I finally cornered him in the kitchen while Araya was upstairs. Sweetheart, we need to talk, I said, keeping my voice gentle. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with all the changes happening. This is still my house, and I'd appreciate being consulted before. Not now, Ma, he cut me off, not even looking up from his phone. I've got a call in 5 minutes. Malcolm, please listen. Just for a moment. I'm trying to tell you. I said not now. His voice was sharp, impatient. Then, softer but somehow worse. You're always complaining about something. Can't you just be grateful we're here taking care of you? Taking care of me. That's what he called it. The gatherings were the worst part. Araya started hosting parties, casual get-togethers with their friends, young professional couples who drank expensive wine and talked about things I didn't understand. Cryptocurrency and portfolio optimization and vacation homes in Tulum. I tried to be sociable at first. I'd come downstairs in my nicest cardigan, ready to chat, maybe offer to help in the kitchen. "Oh my God, Cynthia's here," Araya would announce, her voice dripping with performative sweetness. "Everyone, say hello to Malcolm's mom. She's going to tell us stories about the old days. Aren't you, Cynthia?" The way she said it made me feel like a circus animal being paraded out for entertainment. Her friends would smile politely, and I'd try to join the conversation, but Araya always found ways to make me the punchline. When I mentioned I used to run a tailoring business, can you imagine? Spending your whole life hemming other people's pants. So quaint. When I talked about Philadelphia, Malcolm couldn't wait to get out of there. Such a rough neighborhood, right, Malcolm? His mother really raised him in challenging circumstances. When I offered to cook dinner for everyone, "That's sweet, but we have dietary restrictions you wouldn't understand. It's complicated. Generational thing, you know?" Her friends would laugh, uncomfortable laughs that told me they knew this was cruel but weren't going to say anything. And Malcolm just sat there drinking his beer, letting it happen. One particularly awful evening, I came downstairs to find 6 people in my living room. I'd woken up from a nap and hadn't realized they had company. I was wearing my robe and slippers, my hair uncombed. "Oh, perfect," Araya said loudly. "Cynthia's modeling her evening wear. Doesn't she look elegant?" Everyone stared at me. I felt my face burning with humiliation. "I didn't know you had guests," I stammered. "I'll just go back upstairs." "You do that," Araya said sweetly. "Maybe freshen up a bit? You look a little disheveled." I heard them laughing as I climbed the stairs, my hands shaking, my eyes stinging with tears I refused to let fall until I was behind my closed door. My bedroom, the master bedroom that Robert and I had shared, that I'd occupied since moving to Vermont, became my prison. I started staying up there more and more, avoiding the rest of the house, avoiding them. But even that sanctuary wasn't safe. One morning, I woke up to find Araya measuring my bedroom. "What are you doing?" I asked, confused and alarmed. "Just planning," she said breezily. "This is the biggest room in the house. Seems wasteful for one person, don't you think? Malcolm and I were discussing moving you to the smaller guest room. This would make a great primary suite for us." "This is my room," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This was Robert's room. "Robert's dead, Cynthia," she said flatly, dropping the tape measure. "And this is just a room. Get over it." I tried again to talk to Malcolm. Followed him out to his car one morning before he left for work. "Please, baby," I said, grabbing his arm. "Please talk to me. Araya is being cruel. She's taking over everything. This is my house, and I'm starting to feel like a stranger in it. Like I don't belong here." He pulled his arm away roughly. "You're being dramatic, Ma. Araya's just trying to make the place nicer. Why do you have to be so difficult? Why can't you just appreciate what we're doing for you? What you're doing for me?" The words came out choked. "Malcolm, I gave you everything. I sold my engagement ring so you could go to college. I closed my business to take care of your father. I gave up my whole life in Philadelphia because you said you wanted to take care of me. And now you're throwing it in my face," he snapped. "Classic guilt trip, Ma. Real mature. I have to go to work." He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway, feeling like I'd been slapped. That's when things got worse. So much worse. I started noticing my mail disappearing. Important documents, bank statements, letters from my lawyer, gone before I could see them. When I asked about it, Araya said she was helping me organize and I was too forgetful to keep track of things properly. My phone calls to old friends mysteriously dropped, and when I mentioned it, Malcolm suggested maybe my phone was too old, maybe I needed to upgrade, maybe I should just let him handle it for me. They were isolating me. Deliberately. Systematically. I began to feel like I was losing my mind. Doubting myself constantly. Was I being dramatic? Was I the problem? Was I just a bitter old woman who couldn't adapt to change? But then came the conversation I overheard one night. I'd gone downstairs to get water around midnight and they were in the kitchen, speaking in hushed voices. How much longer? Araya was saying. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of walking on eggshells in what's supposed to be our house. Soon, Malcolm replied. The lawyer said there might be complications with the will, but we're working on it. We just need to be patient. Patient. Araya's voice was bitter. Malcolm, I've been patient. I've been nice to your mother for 8 months. I've smiled and played the good daughter-in-law. But I'm done. This house should be ours. She's old, she doesn't need all this space, and frankly, she's becoming a burden. I know, babe. I know. So what's the plan? We can't just wait for her to die. She could live another 10 years. 20 even. My mother's side lives forever. What if yours does too? Malcolm was quiet for a moment. Then, there are ways to make someone's life uncomfortable enough that they choose to leave. We just need to push a little harder. I stood there in the dark hallway, my hand over my mouth, barely breathing. They wanted me gone. Out of my own house. The house Robert had protected for me, had made sure I'd never lose. I crept back upstairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I went to my closet and pulled out an old journal I'd bought years ago but never used, a leather-bound notebook with cream-colored pages. I started keeping a journal. I didn't know then that it would save my life. The journal helped me see the patterns. Helped me understand I wasn't imagining things or losing my grip on reality. Every incident, every cruel comment, every disappeared belonging, I documented it all with dates, times, and details. But documentation wasn't enough. Not when things started vanishing that I couldn't explain away. My medications went missing first. The blood pressure pills my doctor had prescribed after Robert died, gone from my bathroom cabinet. When I asked about them, Araya looked at me with exaggerated concern. Are you sure you had refills left? Maybe you took them already and forgot. Memory issues are so common at your age. But I hadn't forgotten. I just picked up the prescription 3 days earlier. 90 pills. I'd taken maybe 4. Then my jewelry box disappeared. Not the expensive pieces I'd sold those years ago, but the sentimental ones. Robert's wedding band that I kept in a velvet pouch. My mother's pearl earrings. A silver locket with Malcolm's baby picture inside. When I tore my room apart looking for it, panicking, crying, Araya walked in with that expression of practiced sympathy. What's wrong now? She asked, like I was a child having a tantrum. My jewelry box. Robert's ring. Everything's gone. Did you check the basement? You've been so forgetful lately, Cynthia. You probably moved it and don't remember. But I hadn't moved it. Someone had taken it. That's when I knew I needed proof. Real proof. Something they couldn't dismiss or gaslight me about. I thought about hidden cameras, but I had no idea how to get one or set it up. I was 72 years old. Technology had passed me by in so many ways. I still struggled with my cell phone. Then I remembered Dorothy, my friend from Philadelphia, the one who'd driven me to the hospital before everything fell apart. She'd moved to Burlington 2 years ago to be near her grandchildren. We'd had lunch once or twice, but I'd been so consumed with my own situation that I'd let the friendship drift. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew Malcolm and Araya were both at work. Cynthia. Her voice was warm, surprised. "Oh, honey, I've been meaning to reach out. How are you doing?" I broke down right there on the phone. Told her everything. The erasure, the cruelty, the missing items, the overheard conversation about making me leave. "Jesus Christ," Dorothy breathed. "Cynthia, you need to get out of there. Come stay with me. Right now." "I can't leave," I said. "This is my house. Robert's house. If I leave, I'll never get it back. But I need help, Dorothy. I need to prove what they're doing." There was silence for a moment. Then, my grandson Tyler, he's studying computer science at UVM. He knows all about security cameras, the hidden kind. "Let me call him. We'll figure this out." 2 days later, Dorothy came over for what looked like a friendly visit, with Tyler in tow. He was a sweet kid, 20 years old, with kind eyes that reminded me of Robert. "Mrs. Freeman," he said quietly while Araya was in the kitchen making a show of being hospitable, "I brought some equipment. Small cameras. They're motion-activated and streamed to a cloud account only you can access." "Where would you want them?" "We placed 3 of them. One in the living room, hidden inside a decorative clock on the mantel. One in the hallway near my bedroom. And one, the most important one, in the kitchen tucked behind a cookbook I knew Araya would never touch." Tyler set everything up on my phone, showed me how to check the footage, made me practice until I could do it myself. "You've got 2 weeks of recording time before it loops over," he explained. "Watch the footage regularly. And Mrs. Freeman? Whatever you find, save it. Back it up. Don't let them know you have it until you're ready." For 3 weeks I watched. Every day when they left for work, I'd sit in my room and review the footage from the night before. Most of it was mundane. Them watching TV, making dinner, arguing about ordinary things. But some of it was devastating. I watched Araya going through my mail and throwing half of it away without opening it. I watched her take my mother's china from the cabinet and pack it in boxes marked "Donate." I watched Malcolm walk past my closed bedroom door and call me a stubborn old bitch to Araya. I saved it all. Every cruel moment. Every piece of evidence. Then came Halloween. I'd gone to bed early that night, around 8 o'clock. I wasn't feeling well. My stomach had been bothering me, and I suspected Araya had been putting something in my food, though I couldn't prove it. They were having people over, and I wanted to avoid the humiliation of being paraded around as the pitiful old mother-in-law. The next morning, I checked the footage from the night before. What I saw made my blood run cold. Timestamp read 10:47 p.m. The living room was full of people, maybe 15 of their friends, all dressed in Halloween costumes. Music was playing. People were drinking and laughing. Then Araya appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing one of my old house dresses, the faded blue one I wore when I cleaned. But she'd stuffed it with pillows to make herself look hunched and heavy. She'd painted her face with wrinkles, put on a gray wig, and wrapped herself in strips of white cloth like a mummy. "Look, everyone," she shouted, her voice high and mocking. "I'm Cynthia the mummy." Ancient and falling apart. The room erupted in laughter. She shuffled down the stairs, exaggerating a limp, hunching over dramatically. "Where's my engagement ring?" she wailed in a trembling old woman voice. "I sold it 40 years ago, but I'm still gonna guilt-trip my son about it. Malcolm, why don't you love me? Malcolm, I sacrificed everything for you." I watched Malcolm step forward with his phone, recording her, laughing so hard he could barely hold the camera steady. "Do the walking part," someone shouted. Araya shuffled around the room with exaggerated slowness. "I'm so old and useless. Someone help me cross the room. It'll only take 45 minutes. More laughter. Someone threw a couch pillow at her. She caught it and pretended to be knocked over by its weight. "Oh no, I've fallen and I can't get up. This is Malcolm's problem now. His burden to carry." A woman I didn't recognize, dressed as a witch, chimed in. "How do you deal with her, Malcolm?" Seriously, doesn't she drive you crazy? Camera swung to Malcolm's face. He was grinning. You have no idea. She acts like she's helpless, but it's all manipulation. Classic narcissist behavior. My therapist says I need to establish boundaries, but it's hard when she's living in your house. Your house? Another voice asked. I thought it was her house? Technically, yeah, Malcolm said, and his voice was bitter now. My dad set up this whole legal thing before he died. But we're working on it. She can't stay here forever. Eventually, she'll have to go to a home or something. Araya, still in costume, chimed in, or just die already. Problem solved. She raised a plastic cup. Here's hoping. To inheritance. Everyone laughed. Everyone raised their drinks. To inheritance, they chorused. I sat there on my bed, my phone in my shaking hands, and watched my son and his wife mock everything I was. Mock my age, my body, my sacrifices, my pain. Mock the very fact of my existence. I watched it 3 times. The first time I cried so hard I thought I might be sick. The second time I felt rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The third time I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. I could confront them. I could go downstairs right now, show them this video, scream and cry and demand an apology. But what would that accomplish? They'd deny it, minimize it, gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. They'd take my phone and delete the evidence. They'd probably escalate their cruelty, knowing I was onto them. Or I could be smarter. I could document everything. Build a case. Find a lawyer who understood elder abuse. Hit them with something they wouldn't see coming. I thought about Sophia Martinez. Sophia had been 17 years old when she came into my shop in Philadelphia, terrified and pregnant. She was graduating high school and needed a dress for the ceremony because she wanted to walk across that stage with her head held high. She had $47. The dress she needed would have cost $300. I made it for her anyway. For free. A beautiful royal blue dress that fit her perfectly, that made her look strong and capable and proud. She'd cried when she tried it on. Why are you doing this for me? She'd asked. Because every woman deserves to feel powerful, I told her. And because someday, when you have the chance, you'll do the same for someone else. She'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Years later, I'd gotten a card in the mail. Sophia had put herself through community college, then university, then law school. She'd become an attorney specializing in family law and elder advocacy. She'd written, I've never forgotten your kindness. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. I kept that card. It was in my wallet right now. I picked up my phone and dialed the number she'd written at the bottom. It rang 3 times. Then, Martinez and Associates, this is Sophia Martinez speaking. Sophia. My voice cracked. This is Cynthia Freeman. I made you a blue dress 26 years ago. And I need help. There was a pause. Then her voice came back, gentle but firm. Mrs. Freeman. Tell me everything. Sophia came to see me the next day. Not to her office downtown. She came to the house during the afternoon when Malcolm and Araya were at work. She arrived in a modest sedan, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a kind expression that made me want to cry all over again. She'd grown into a beautiful woman. The scared 17-year-old I dressed for graduation was now 43, confident and professional, with warm brown eyes and the same grateful smile I remembered. Mrs. Freeman, she said, embracing me at the door. Or should I call you Cynthia now? Cynthia's fine, I said, leading her inside to the kitchen table. My hands were trembling as I poured us both coffee. She didn't waste time. Show me everything. I pulled out my phone and played the Halloween video first. I watched her face as she viewed it, saw her jaw tighten, her eyes narrow, her professional mask slip just enough to reveal genuine anger. When it ended, she was quiet for a long moment. May I? She asked, gesturing to my phone. I nodded, and she watched it again, this time taking notes on a legal pad. Then she looked up at me. This is elder abuse, she said flatly. Emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and I suspect if we dig deeper we'll find more. You said on the phone that this is your house. Tell me about that. I explained everything. How Robert and I had bought the property together in 1995. How his will had left it specifically to me with unusual provisions. How Robert had worked with a lawyer in Philadelphia, a man named Harold Chen, to ensure the house could never be taken from me. Robert was paranoid about it, I explained. He'd seen too many cases of elderly people being pushed out of their homes by family members. He made me promise I'd never sign anything without reading it carefully. And he put protections in place. Sophia's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. Do you have copies of the will? The deed? Any legal documents? I did, I said carefully. But they've disappeared. I think Araya took them when she was organizing my paperwork months ago. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. That's common in these cases. They isolate, they erase documentation, they make you doubt your own memories. But here's the thing, Cynthia, we can get copies. Court records, county registrar, the lawyer who handled the estate. Nothing's truly gone. She made several phone calls right there at my kitchen table. Within an hour, she'd contacted Harold Chen's firm in Philadelphia, requested copies of Robert's will and all related documents, and arranged to pull property records from the county office. Now, she said, setting down her phone, tell me about this asset reallocation clause Robert mentioned. What do you remember? I closed my eyes, trying to recall the conversation from 6 years ago. Robert was very specific about it. He said if Malcolm ever mistreated me, if he tried to take advantage or abuse me, there was a provision that would allow me to reallocate the assets. The house, the small inheritance, everything could be redirected away from Malcolm if I needed protection. Sophia's eyebrows rose. That's incredibly forward-thinking. Your husband must have been a very wise man. He was, I whispered. He really was. Over the next 3 weeks, Sophia and I built a case that was airtight and devastating. She obtained all the legal documents proving the house was mine, completely and unequivocally. She found Robert's detailed instructions about the asset reallocation clause. It turned out he'd created a provision that allowed me to donate or redirect any inheritance if I could prove persistent mistreatment, abandonment, or abuse by the beneficiary. We gathered my journals, months of documented incidents with dates, times, and details. Sophia photographed every page. We pulled my medical records showing the gallbladder surgery and the discharge instructions that specifically stated I needed assistance and shouldn't be left alone. This proved Malcolm's abandonment wasn't just cruel, it was medically dangerous. We collected bank statements showing mysterious withdrawals I hadn't authorized. Apparently, Malcolm had gotten access to one of my accounts somehow and had been slowly draining it. $1,200 here, $800 there. Small enough that I hadn't noticed immediately. Sophia helped me change all my passwords and secure my remaining accounts. They were counting on you not paying attention, she said. Or being too afraid to check. We reached out to neighbors, and their testimonies broke my heart and strengthened my resolve simultaneously. Mrs. Patricia Chen, who lived 3 houses down, came forward immediately. She was a tiny woman in her 80s who walked her dog past my house every morning. I've seen things, she told Sophia during a recorded phone call I listened to on speaker. That young woman, the daughter-in-law, she talks to Cynthia like she's dirt. I've heard her from the yard. And the son never stops it. Never defends his mother. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to intrude on family business. I feel terrible now. Don't feel terrible, Sophia told her gently. You're helping now. That's what matters. James Rodriguez, the mailman, confirmed that he'd seen Araya intercepting my mail on multiple occasions. She'd wait by the mailbox, he said. Specifically asked me to hand it to her instead of putting it in the box. said Mrs. Freeman was confused and might lose important documents. I thought I was helping. Even Dorothy provided a statement about my call to her, about my distress, about how I described the systematic erasure of my life and identity. We gathered photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of me and Robert at the house over the years, proving our long history there. Pictures of Malcolm as a child, held in my arms, surrounded by my love. Receipts from when I'd paid for his college, for his wedding, for so many things over the years. Sophia spread them all out on my kitchen table one afternoon, creating a visual timeline of my life and my sacrifices. "This is your story," she said. "Not the story they've been telling their friends. Not the burden, not the helpless old woman, not the inconvenience. This is the truth of who you are and what you've given." I stared at those photographs and felt something shift inside me. For months, I'd been shrinking, disappearing, accepting their narrative that I was the problem. But looking at this evidence, seeing my life laid out in black and white, I remembered who I'd been. Cynthia Freeman. Business owner. Devoted wife. Loving mother. Survivor. The internal conflict was still there, though. Late at night, lying in bed, I'd think about Malcolm as a baby. The way he'd grab my finger with his tiny hand. The way he'd run to me when he scraped his knee. The way he'd said, "I love you, Mama," in his sweet little voice. Where had that boy gone? When had he become this stranger who could mock me at parties and lock me out of my own home? I still loved him. God help me, I still loved my son. And that made everything hurt so much more. "It's okay to grieve," Sophia told me when I broke down during one of our meetings. "You're not just fighting for your house, Cynthia. You're grieving the loss of your son, the person you thought he was. That's a real loss. It's allowed to hurt. But grief couldn't stop me. Not anymore." Sophia's strategy was brilliant and brutal. We would file for enforcement of Robert's asset reallocation clause, citing elder abuse and financial exploitation. We'd present the video evidence, the journals, the witness statements, the medical records, everything. We'd show the court exactly who Malcolm and Araya were and exactly what they'd done. "They're going to try to paint you as confused, senile, vindictive," Sophia warned me. "They'll say you're misremembering things, that you're bitter, that this is all a misunderstanding. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared," I said, and I meant it. We prepared for depositions. Sophia coached me on how to speak clearly, calmly, factually. How to not let them bait me into emotional reactions. How to present myself as competent and credible. "You're going to have to sit in a room with them," she said. "Look them in the eye. Watch them lie about you. Can you do that?" I thought about the Halloween video, about Araya's mocking voice, about Malcolm's laughter, about them toasting to my death. "Can," I said. "I absolutely can." We filed the lawsuit on a gray Monday morning in early November. Sophia hand-delivered the papers to Malcolm at his office. She told me later that his face had gone completely white when he read them. "He kept saying, 'This is a mistake,'" Sophia reported. "My mother wouldn't do this. She doesn't understand what she's signing." "What did you tell him?" I asked. Sophia smiled grimly. "I told him his mother understands perfectly, and that he should get a very good lawyer because he's going to need one." Court date was set for December 15th. A little over 30 days away. I had 30 days to prepare to face my own son. 30 days to ready myself for the moment when I'd stop being silent and start fighting back. 30 days until everyone would know the truth. I spent them gathering my strength, reviewing my evidence, and remembering who I was before they tried to erase me. I was Cynthia Freeman, and I wasn't going anywhere. I wore purple to court. Deep royal purple. A suit I'd made myself 30 years ago, still perfectly tailored, still elegant. The color of dignity and power. Color that said I knew exactly who I was. Sophia had suggested something neutral, but I'd refused. "I spent months disappearing," I told her. "I'm not going to be invisible anymore." She'd smiled at that. Purple it is. Dorothy drove me to the courthouse that morning. My hands were steady as we walked up the stone steps, past the columns, into the marble lobby where justice was supposed to live. I'd barely slept the night before, but I felt sharp, focused, ready. Malcolm and Araya were already there with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who probably cost more per hour than I'd made in a month at my shop. They sat on a bench outside the courtroom, and when Araya saw me, she actually smirked. She leaned over and whispered something to Malcolm. He glanced up, saw me in my purple suit, and looked away quickly. But I caught something in his expression, uncertainty maybe. Fear, possibly. Good. Araya, though, looked confident. She wore a tasteful black dress and pearls, playing the part of the dutiful, concerned daughter-in-law. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup was understated. She looked like someone who'd never dressed up as Cynthia the Mummy and mocked an old woman's suffering. "Don't react," Sophia murmured beside me. "Let them think whatever they want. The truth speaks for itself." We entered the courtroom, a wood-paneled room with high ceilings and an American flag in the corner. Judge Helen Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Proceedings began with typical legal formalities. Then Sophia stood for her opening statement. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and strong, "this case is about erasure. About a 72-year-old woman who spent her entire life giving everything to her family, only to have that family systematically attempt to erase her existence, steal her home, and profit from her anticipated death." Malcolm's lawyer objected. "That's inflammatory language, Your Honor." "It's accurate language," Sophia countered. "And the evidence will prove it beyond any doubt." Judge Morrison gestured for her to continue. Sophia painted the picture methodically. Robert's careful planning. His legal provisions specifically designed to protect me. The house that was unequivocally mine. Malcolm and Araya moving in under the guise of family support, then slowly taking over, isolating me, erasing me. "Mrs. Freeman documented everything," Sophia said. "Because when you're being gaslit, when people are telling you you're confused and forgetful and imagining things, documentation becomes survival." Then came the evidence. First, the medical records from my surgery. Sophia had the hospital administrator testify via video conference about discharge procedures and protocols. Mrs. Freeman required assistance for at least 48 hours post-surgery, the administrator confirmed. Leaving a patient in her condition alone would be medically inadvisable and potentially dangerous. The discharge paperwork clearly states she needed a responsible adult to drive her home and monitor her. "And what happened instead?" Sophia asked. "According to our records, Mrs. Freeman's son refused to pick her up despite multiple phone calls. She was forced to rent a car and drive herself home while still under the effects of anesthesia and pain medication." Malcolm's lawyer jumped up. "My client was at an important business meeting. It was unfortunate timing but hardly abuse." Sophia turned to him calmly. 5 phone calls over 3 hours. That's what it took for him to finally tell his post-surgical mother she was on her own. "We have the phone records." She projected them on a screen for the court to see. 5 calls, each lasting between 47 seconds and 2 minutes. The timestamps told the story of my increasing desperation. Next came the financial records. Sophia walked the judge through the unauthorized withdrawals from my account. Malcolm's lawyer tried to claim I'd given him permission, but Sophia had bank security footage showing Malcolm at the ATM using my card, a card I'd never given him. "How did you obtain Mrs. Freeman's PIN?" Sophia asked Malcolm directly during his testimony. He fumbled. "She must have told me at some point. I don't remember exactly." "You don't remember? But you remember clearly enough to withdraw money 12 separate times over 4 months? I was helping her manage her finances." "She's old, she gets confused." "Mrs. Freeman ran a successful business for 37 years, Sophia cut him off. She managed complex accounts, payroll, inventory. But suddenly, at 72, you expect us to believe she can't handle a checking account? Malcolm had no good answer. Then Sophia played the Halloween video. Courtroom went absolutely silent as Araya's mocking voice filled the space. I watched Malcolm's face as his wife appeared on screen in my house dress, wrapped in white strips, exaggerating a hunched posture. I'm Cynthia the mummy. Ancient and falling apart. His face went pale. Actually pale. He'd known this video existed. He'd filmed it after all, but I don't think he'd ever imagined it being played in a court of law. Araya's face, though. Araya's face was priceless. She went from smug confidence to pure horror in about 3 seconds flat. She grabbed her lawyer's arm, whispering frantically. The video continued. The mocking shuffle. Cruel imitation of my voice. The jokes about my age, my body, my supposed helplessness. Malcolm's laughter. His comments about me being a burden, a narcissist, someone who needed to go to a home or just die already. Toast to inheritance. When it ended, Judge Morrison's expression was like ice. Is that you, Mrs. Ramirez? The judge asked Araya directly. Araya's lawyer tried to intervene. Your Honor, this was a private party taken out of context. I asked Mrs. Ramirez a direct question, Judge Morrison said sharply. Is that you in the video? Araya's face was red now. It was Halloween. It was just a costume. It was a joke. A joke? The judge's voice could have cut glass. Everyone dresses up as things. It wasn't meant to be cruel, we were just having fun. You were mocking your mother-in-law's age and physical condition, Judge Morrison said. You were celebrating the prospect of her death so you could inherit property that doesn't belong to you. That's what I saw. Sophia then read from my journals. Entry after entry in my own handwriting documenting the erasure. She read the one about my burgundy chair disappearing. About my sewing machine being relegated to the basement. About being humiliated at parties. About overhearing their conversation about making my life uncomfortable enough that I'd leave. The neighbors testified next. Mrs. Chen described the verbal abuse she'd witnessed. James Rodriguez confirmed the mail interception. Dorothy spoke about my desperate phone call, about how broken and frightened I'd sounded. Malcolm's defense was pathetic. His lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, as a difficult person to live with, as someone who resented their youth and success. Mrs. Freeman was jealous of my client's marriage, the lawyer suggested. She inserted herself into their lives and then became resentful when they needed space. Sophia demolished that argument in seconds. The house belongs to Mrs. Freeman. Your clients moved into her home at her generosity. How exactly did she insert herself into her own property? Then came the explanation of Robert's legal provisions. Sophia brought in Harold Chen, the Philadelphia lawyer who'd helped Robert draft the will via video conference. Mr. Freeman was exceptionally thorough, Harold testified. He'd seen too many cases of elder financial abuse. He specifically created an asset reallocation clause that would allow Mrs. Freeman to redirect any inheritance if Malcolm engaged in abandonment, abuse, or exploitation. And the threshold for invoking this clause? Sophia asked. Documented pattern of mistreatment, which Mrs. Freeman has clearly established. Malcolm's lawyer made a last desperate attempt. My client made mistakes, yes. But to take away his inheritance, his mother's home, surely that's excessive for some family disagreements? That's when Araya snapped. Some disagreements? She shouted, standing up abruptly. She's a manipulative old woman who guilts Malcolm about everything. She won't let him live his own life. She holds that stupid engagement ring over his head like he owes her his entire existence. Mrs. Ramirez, sit down, her lawyer hissed, trying to pull her back. But Araya was on a roll now, her careful facade completely shattered. We've been patient. We've been kind. We let her live in that house when we could have put her in a home years ago. And this is how she repays us? By trying to steal what's rightfully Malcolm's? It's not rightfully Malcolm's, Judge Morrison said coldly. It's Mrs. Freeman's property, explicitly left to her by her late husband, with legal protections precisely for situations like this. Araya's face went from red to white. She sat down hard, realizing she'd just destroyed any remaining credibility they had. Malcolm looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His lawyer was frantically writing notes, probably calculating how badly they'd just lost. Judge Morrison looked at me directly for the first time. Mrs. Freeman, do you have anything you'd like to say to the court? Sophia had coached me on this moment. Keep it brief, she'd said. Keep it factual. Don't get emotional. But when the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. And I decided Sophia's advice could wait. I stood there in my purple suit, looking directly at the judge and felt every eye in the courtroom on me. Sophia touched my arm gently, a reminder to stay calm, stay measured. But some things need to be said with the full weight of a broken heart behind them. Your Honor, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I sold my engagement ring so my son could go to college. It was a half-carat diamond in a white gold setting, not much to look at, but it meant everything to me. My husband Robert saved for 8 months to buy it. We were young and broke, and that ring represented every hope we had for our future together. I saw Malcolm flinch. Good. I sold it for $11,000. Added it to our savings and took out loans so Malcolm could attend Wharton. And I never once, not once, threw it in his face. I never guilt him. I never made him feel like he owed me. That's what parents do. We sacrifice because we love our children, not because we expect repayment. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. I closed my business to care for my dying husband. 37 years of work, of building something I was proud of, and I walked away without hesitation because Robert needed me. That's what love looks like. Real love. Not the conditional kind where you only care about someone when it's convenient. I looked at Malcolm now. Really looked at him. I moved to Vermont because you said you wanted me close. You said family takes care of family. I believed you. I trusted you. And you took that trust and crushed it under your heel like it was nothing. Araya started to speak, but her lawyer grabbed her arm hard enough to make her wince. I don't care about the house, I continued, turning back to Judge Morrison. Not really. I care that my son looked me in the eye and told me I was pathetic. Care that his wife dressed up as me and mocked my age, my body, my existence. I care that they toasted to my death like it was something to celebrate. My hands were shaking now, but I kept going. I'm 72 years old. I've lived a good life. I've loved deeply and worked hard and tried to be kind. And I'm standing here today not because I want revenge, but because I want my dignity back. 'Cause no one should have to beg their own child to pick them up from the hospital. No one should be locked out of their own home. No one should be erased. I took a breath. Robert put those legal protections in place because he was wiser than me. He saw possibilities I couldn't imagine. He knew that sometimes the people we love most can hurt us worst. And he wanted to make sure I'd be protected. I'm here today invoking those protections, Your Honor. Not for money. Not for revenge. But because my husband loved me enough to make sure I'd never be helpless. And I owe it to his memory to fight back. I sat down. Courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Morrison removed her glasses and looked at Malcolm and Araya for a long moment. Then she began to speak, and her voice was like steel wrapped in ice. In 30 years on the bench, she said, I have seen many forms of family dysfunction, but rarely have I seen such calculated cruelty disguised as caregiving. What you have done, Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Ramirez, is not just morally reprehensible, it is legally actionable elder abuse. Malcolm's lawyer started to stand, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. Don't. Just don't. She continued. You moved into your mother's home under false pretenses. You isolated her from her community. You intercepted her mail, stole her possessions, drained her bank accounts, and mocked her suffering for entertainment. You abandoned her post-surgery, leaving her to drive herself home despite medical advice. You changed the locks on her own property to keep her out. And when caught, your only defense has been to call her vindictive and confused. The judge looked down at her notes. The evidence is overwhelming. The video alone is damning, and Mrs. Ramirez, your outburst today only confirmed what that video showed. You view your mother-in-law as an obstacle to be removed, not a person to be respected. Araya was crying now. Not sad tears. Angry tears. Her face was twisted with rage and humiliation. The asset reallocation clause in Robert Freeman's will is valid and enforceable, Judge Morrison stated. It was specifically designed for circumstances exactly like these. Mr. Freeman, you have systematically violated every condition your father set for maintaining your inheritance rights. She paused, letting that sink in. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of Cynthia Freeman on all counts. Malcolm made a sound, something between a gasp and a protest. You and Mrs. Ramirez are hereby ordered to vacate the Vermont property within 21 days. All of Mrs. Freeman's possessions that you have taken, hidden, or disposed of must be returned or compensated for. You will have no claim to the property now or in the future. Sophia squeezed my hand under the table. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am awarding Mrs. Freeman $300,000 in damages. This includes compensation for emotional distress, financial exploitation, medical endangerment, and the considerable attorney fees she has incurred fighting for her own home. $300,000. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. Malcolm shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's insane. We don't have that kind of money. This will destroy us financially. You should have considered that, Judge Morrison said coldly, before you destroyed your mother emotionally. You will set up a payment plan or we will garnish your wages. Your financial comfort is not my concern. Your mother's well-being is. She wasn't finished. I am also issuing a no-contact restraining order. You are not to call, text, email, or approach Mrs. Freeman in any way. If she wishes to communicate with you in the future, that will be her choice. But you have lost the privilege of access to her. Malcolm looked like he'd been punched. Araya was openly sobbing now, her careful composure completely demolished. But she's my mother, Malcolm said, and his voice actually broke. You can't stop me from seeing my own mother. You stopped being her son, Judge Morrison replied, the moment you locked her out of her own house and laughed about it. She can decide if you ever earn that title back. The court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the room. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the courtroom erupted into whispered conversations. I saw several people in the gallery, journalists I realized, already typing frantically on their phones. This was going to be news. Local news, maybe national news. The son who mocked his elderly mother and lost everything. Malcolm and Araya were arguing with their lawyer in harsh whispers. She was crying harder now, mascara running down her face. He looked shell-shocked, disbelieving, like surely this couldn't be real. Araya suddenly turned to me, her voice rising. You vindictive bitch. You're destroying your own son's life. What kind of mother does that? Security started moving toward her, but Sophia stepped between us. My client has a restraining order against you now. I suggest you start respecting it. This isn't over. Araya shouted as her lawyer pulled her toward the exit. We'll appeal. We'll fight this. You haven't won. But her voice was desperate now. She knew the truth. They'd lost. Completely and utterly lost. Malcolm didn't shout. He just looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. Hurt? Betrayal? Disbelief that his own mother had actually fought back? Ma, he said quietly. Just that one word. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. He left the courtroom behind Araya, his shoulders slumped, looking smaller somehow than he had an hour ago. People were congratulating me, strangers from the gallery, court staff, even the bailiff gave me a subtle nod of approval. A journalist approached Sophia, asking for a statement. She politely declined but handed him her card. "My client needs privacy to process this ruling," she said. "But we're satisfied with the outcome." Dorothy appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, honey. You actually did it." But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt heavy. Tired. Like I'd just fought a war and won, but the cost was everything I'd loved about my old life. Sophia guided me out of the courtroom, through the marble lobby, down the courthouse steps into cold December air. Journalists called questions that I didn't answer. Cameras flashed. Sophia kept her hand on my elbow, steady and protective. We reached her car and I finally let myself breathe. Really breathe. For the first time in months, maybe years. "You're free," Sophia said softly. "Cynthia, you're actually free." I nodded, but the tears came anyway. Not sad tears. Not happy tears. Something in between, grief and relief and exhaustion all mixed together. Dorothy drove me home, to my home which was truly mine again. We didn't talk much during the 43-minute drive. She just held my hand across the center console and let me cry. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw Malcolm's car and Araya's SUV already there. They'd beaten us back. They were inside, probably frantically packing, probably panicking about what came next. "Do you want me to stay?" Dorothy asked. "I don't think you should be alone with them right now." "I'll be okay," I said. "They have 3 weeks to leave. Tonight I'll stay with you. Let them have the house for a few more hours. I can wait." But as we drove to Dorothy's apartment, as I settled into her guest room and finally let myself rest, one thought kept circling through my mind. The money wasn't what I wanted. The house, technically, wasn't even what I wanted most. What I wanted was purpose. What I wanted was to make sure this never happened to anyone else. I wasn't done yet. Not even close. 3 weeks after the verdict, Malcolm and Araya moved out. They didn't say goodbye. They just loaded their belongings into a U-Haul truck on a gray January morning and drove away without looking back. I stood at the window watching them leave, and all I felt was silence. Not relief, not satisfaction, just quiet. Like a storm that had finally passed, leaving behind strange calm and uncertain sky. Dorothy helped me walk through the house that afternoon, documenting what they'd damaged or taken. Holes in the walls where they'd removed artwork. Scratches on the hardwood floors from furniture being dragged carelessly. My mother's china gone despite the court order. My jewelry box still missing. They'd taken what they could and destroyed what they couldn't. "We can sue them again," Sophia said when I showed her the photos. "This violates the court order." "Let it go," I told her. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life chasing them through courtrooms. They're gone. That's enough." But standing in that house, surrounded by the evidence of their spite, I realized something important. This place wasn't home anymore. It was just a building filled with ghosts. Robert's ghost, the ghost of the son I thought I had, the ghost of the woman I used to be. I didn't want to live here. Not anymore. 2 days later, I called Sophia with an idea that had been forming since the verdict. "I want to donate the property," I told her. There was a pause. "The entire property? Cynthia, that's worth at least $800,000. You could sell it, use the money for—" "I don't need the money," I interrupted gently. "I have Robert's life insurance, my Social Security, and now the settlement from Malcolm. I'm comfortable. But this house, it could be something meaningful. Something that helps people like me." "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked, and I could hear the curiosity in her voice. "A transitional housing facility," I said. "For elderly women escaping abuse from family members. place where they can live safely while they rebuild their lives and fight their legal battles. Somewhere they're not alone. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That's beautiful, Cynthia. That's really beautiful." We spent the next 3 months establishing the legal framework, creating a non-profit organization, setting up a board of directors, renovating the house to accommodate multiple residents, converting the large bedrooms into small apartments, adding a commercial kitchen, creating common spaces. I named it Haven of Silent Strength. Silent because so many victims suffer quietly, afraid to speak up. Strength because surviving abuse and fighting back requires courage most people never have to find. The name felt right. Felt like Robert would have approved. Sophia helped me recruit a small staff, a social worker, a part-time nurse, a house manager. We set up partnerships with legal aid organizations and local law enforcement. We created intake procedures and safety protocols. And then we opened the doors. The first resident was a woman named Margaret Shen, no relation to my neighbor Patricia, though they shared the same last name. She was 68 years old and had been living with her daughter and son-in-law who'd been systematically draining her retirement accounts. They'd convinced her she had dementia, that she couldn't be trusted to manage her own affairs, that she should be grateful they were taking care of her. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a look of absolute terror, like she expected to be punished for leaving. "You're safe here," I told her, showing her to her room. A small apartment with a private bathroom, a kitchenette and windows that looked out at the maple trees. "Nobody can hurt you here. Nobody can tell you you're worthless or crazy or a burden. You're just Margaret and that's enough." She cried in my arms. "I thought I was losing my mind," she whispered. "I thought maybe they were right, maybe I was confused and ungrateful." "You're not confused," I said firmly. "You're being abused. And now you're going to fight back. We'll help you." Over the next 6 months, Haven filled with women. 7 residents, each with her own story of erasure and cruelty and family betrayal. There was Linda, 74, whose son had tried to have her declared incompetent so he could access her savings. There was Rosemary, 81, whose grandchildren had moved into her house and refused to leave. There was Yuki, 69, whose daughter-in-law had been slowly poisoning her food with laxatives to make her appear sick and frail. I listened to their stories and I saw myself in every one of them. The same disbelief. The same shame. The same question: how did the people I loved become people I need to fear? I started teaching workshops in the common room twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Documentation techniques, how to keep detailed journals, how to save evidence, how to photograph and timestamp everything. Self-advocacy, how to speak up, how to trust your own reality, how to recognize gaslighting. Legal rights, what elder abuse laws exist, how to find lawyers, what resources are available. Sophia came as a guest speaker several times, explaining the legal process in language everyone could understand. But my favorite part was when I set up my sewing workshop in the sunroom. The room Araya had taken from me that I'd reclaimed and transformed into something beautiful. I brought my sewing machines up from the basement, arranged my cutting table by the window, organized my thread and fabric and patterns. And I started making clothes again. Not fancy dresses this time. Practical things. Comfortable pants with elastic waists for women whose bodies had changed. Soft cardigans in cheerful colors. Aprons for cooking. Simple skirts. Clothing that made women feel dignified and comfortable in their own skin. Margaret asked if I could teach her to sew. Then Linda asked. Then 3 others. Soon we had a sewing circle, 7 elderly women and me, sitting in the sunroom on Thursday afternoons, working on simple projects, talking and laughing and healing together. "This is what family should feel like," Rosemary said one afternoon, holding up a pillowcase she'd just finished hemming. "This right here. The people who actually care. This is family," I told her. "Not the family we were born into. The family we chose." Meanwhile, the outside world was having its own reckoning with Malcolm and Araya. 2 weeks after they moved out, Araya did something spectacularly stupid. She started a GoFundMe campaign. The title was, "Help Us Recover from Unjust Court Ruling." The description painted them as victims of a vindictive, mentally unstable mother who'd manipulated the legal system out of spite. She claimed they'd been caregivers for me, that they'd sacrificed their own comfort to help me, that the court had been deceived by my lies. She was asking for $50,000. The campaign went viral, but not the way she'd hoped. Someone, I never found out who, leaked the Halloween video to the GoFundMe comments. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. News outlets picked it up. Reddit threads dissected it. Twitter, or X, whatever they were calling it now, tore them apart. Court transcripts became public record, and journalists wrote detailed articles about the case. "Son mocks elderly mother, loses everything in court" was one headline. "The Halloween costume that cost them $300,000 was another. Araya's social media accounts were flooded with comments calling her a monster. Malcolm's employer, a respected investment firm, received hundreds of complaints. They put out a statement saying they were reviewing the matter. 3 weeks later, Malcolm was quietly let go. Professional consequences for unprofessional behavior, they called it. Araya's consulting business, the one she'd been so proud of, never got off the ground. Nobody wanted to work with someone whose cruelty had gone viral. They tried moving to a different city, but the internet doesn't forget. Their names were permanently linked to that video, to those court documents, to the story of elder abuse that had captured public attention. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall. Just sadness. Just waste. Malcolm tried to contact me twice. Once through a letter that arrived at Haven, which I returned unopened. Once through Dorothy, asking if we could meet to talk. "He says he's sorry," Dorothy told me gently. "He says he didn't understand how bad things had gotten. He wants a chance to apologize in person." "What do you think I should do?" I asked her. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "That's not my decision, honey. But I'll tell you this, you don't owe him anything. Not your time, not your forgiveness, not another chance to hurt you." I thought about it for several days. I imagined sitting across from Malcolm, hearing him apologize, maybe even believing he meant it. I imagined the relief of reconciliation, of having my son back. But then I remembered his face in that video. His laughter. His words, "She's pathetic. She's always needing something." I remembered him refusing to pick me up from the hospital. Remembered him standing at the window while I begged to be let into my own home. I remembered that some wounds don't heal just because someone says sorry. I told Dorothy to tell him no. Some people, well-meaning friends, neighbors, even one of the residents at Haven, thought I should forgive him. That family is family, that life is short, that holding grudges only hurts yourself. "You only get one son," Patricia Chen told me over coffee one morning. "Maybe he deserves another chance." I set down my cup and looked at her directly. Some people thought I should forgive them. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone hurt you again. "So you'll never speak to him again?" she asked. "Never give him a chance to make amends?" "Maybe someday," I said honestly. "If he does the real work. If he gets therapy, if he truly understands what he did and why it was wrong, if he spends years proving he's changed, maybe. But I'm not going to rush my healing to make him feel better about his guilt. I'm not going to sacrifice my peace to ease his conscience." Patricia nodded slowly. "That's fair, I suppose." "It's not about fair," I told her. "It's about survival. I spent months being erased, being told I was the problem, being made to feel like my existence was a burden. I'm not going back to that. Not for anyone. Not even for my son." 1 year later, I'm sitting in my workshop at Haven of Silent Strength, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, my hands steady on fabric that will become a dress for Elena, our newest resident. She's 65 and needs something dignified to wear to her court hearing next week. Something that makes her feel powerful when she faces the son who forged her signature on loan documents. The dress is deep emerald green. Color of renewal. Of growth. of second chances. Through the open door, I can hear voices from the common room. Margaret is teaching Rosemary how to use the computer to check her bank accounts online, something Rosemary's family told her she was too old and stupid to understand. She's learning just fine. Linda is in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming along to jazz music on the radio. Yuki is on the phone with her lawyer, her voice strong and clear, no longer the frightened whisper it was when she first arrived. Haven has become more than I imagined. We've housed 14 women in the past year. 7 are still here, building their cases, healing their wounds, learning to trust themselves again. The other 7 have moved on, into their own apartments, into reconciled family situations that actually became healthy, into new chapters of their lives where they're respected and safe. We've won 4 court cases. Lost one, but even that woman, I'll call her Grace, found peace in knowing she'd fought back, that she hadn't gone quietly into erasure. The house itself has transformed. What used to be cold and hostile under Araya's reign is now warm and alive. Plants on every windowsill. Artwork on the walls made by residents. A community bulletin board covered with inspirational quotes, legal resources, and photos of women smiling, really smiling, for the first time in years. In the entryway, there's a bronze plaque that reads, "In memory of Robert Freeman, who knew that true strength lies in protecting those we love." I think about Robert every day. Wonder what he'd say if he could see what his careful planning created. Not just the legal protections that saved me, but this place, this community, this proof that pain can become purpose. I think he'd be proud. There's a soft knock on my workshop door. Selena, the woman I'm making the dress for. She's holding a package, looking uncertain. "This came for you," she says. Return address says Malcolm Freeman. I thought you should know before you opened it. My hand's still on the fabric. Malcolm. I haven't heard from him in 11 months, not since I refused his request to meet. Haven't seen him, haven't spoken to him, haven't opened the 3 previous letters he sent. "Thank you, Elena," I say, taking the package. It's a padded envelope, something small inside. A letter, probably. Maybe more. She hesitates at the door. "Are you going to open it?" I look at the envelope, at my son's handwriting, still familiar after all this time, after everything. Then I set it on the shelf with the other unopened letters. "Not today," I say. "Maybe not ever. That's my choice to make." Elena nods slowly. "My son keeps calling. Leaves voicemail saying he's changed, he's in therapy, he understands now. Part of me wants to believe him so badly. But the other part remembers," I finish gently. "That's okay, Elena. Both parts are valid. You don't have to rush forgiveness to make him comfortable. You get to heal at your own pace." She smiles, tentative but real. "That's what you always say." I'm starting to believe it. After she leaves, I sit with my thoughts for a while, my hands idle on the emerald fabric. I've learned so much this year. About dignity, how it's not something people can take from you, only something you can choose to surrender, and I'm done surrendering. About boundaries, how saying no isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. About self-worth, how it doesn't come from sacrifice or what you can give others, but from knowing your own value regardless of whether anyone else sees it. I've learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who witness your pain and believe you, who hold space for your healing without demanding you hurry up and get over it. Dorothy is family. Sophia is family. The 7 women living here, they're family. Patricia Chen, who brings over homemade soup once a week, she's family. Tyler, who still helps us with technology and calls me Mrs. Freeman with such respect it makes my heart hurt in the best way. He's family too. Malcolm? I don't know what Malcolm is anymore. Not family, not really. Not the son I raised. Maybe someday he'll do the work to become someone I can trust again. Maybe not. Either way, my healing doesn't depend on his redemption. A young woman arrives around 4 o'clock. She's 70 years old, though I know that seems contradictory to call 70 young, but in this place, in this context, she is young. Her name is Bethany, and she was referred by a social worker after her daughter-in-law emptied her savings account and convinced her husband that his mother was too senile to notice. I see myself in her immediately. The shame in her posture. The way she apologizes for everything, for taking up space, for needing help, for existing. The disbelief that her own family could do this to her. I take her hand, wrinkled and trembling like mine, and I tell her what I wish someone had told me sooner. You're not crazy. You're not the problem. You're being abused. And you're allowed to fight back. She breaks down crying, and I hold her while she sobs, while she releases months or maybe years of gaslit confusion and self-blame. I thought I was losing my mind, she whispers. I thought maybe I did forget, maybe I'm too old, maybe they're right about me. They're not right, I tell her firmly. And you're going to document everything from this moment forward. We're going to help you. You're not alone anymore. Later that evening, after dinner, after the residents have scattered to their rooms or the TV lounge or the back porch where Margaret likes to read, I return to my workshop. The emerald dress is finished except for the hem. I'll complete it tomorrow. I sit in my chair, not the burgundy one Araya donated, that one's gone forever, but a new one, deep purple velvet that Dorothy helped me pick out, and I think about everything that's happened. Everything I've survived. Everything I've become. I'm not the same Cynthia who stood on that porch a year ago, locked out and broken. I'm not even the same Cynthia who walked into that courtroom in purple, angry and determined but still wounded. I'm someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who knows that surviving isn't the same as living, and I'm finally doing both. I think about all the people who might hear this story. All the people who might be sitting in their own homes right now, being erased, being told they're the problem, being made to feel like their suffering doesn't matter. And I want to say this directly to them. If you're watching this and you're being erased by the people who should protect you, document everything. Write it down. Date it. Save evidence. Take photos. Record conversations if your state allows it. Your truth matters. Your voice matters. You matter. Don't let anyone convince you that you're imagining things or being too sensitive or asking for too much. Trust your gut. If it feels like abuse, it probably is. You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter how old you are, no matter how much you need help, no matter what sacrifices you made in the past. You're not a burden. You're a human being. And if you're ready to fight back, know that there are people who will help you. Lawyers like Sophia. Organizations like Haven. Friends like Dorothy. You don't have to do this alone. The sun is setting now, painting the Vermont sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Through my workshop window, I can see the maple trees Robert loved so much. In a few months, they'll turn brilliant colors again. The cycle continues. Seasons change. Life goes on. I'm 73 years old. I don't know how many more years I have. But however many they are, I'm going to spend them here, in this house that almost destroyed me, that I transformed into something that saves people. I'm going to keep sewing. Keep teaching. Keep believing that healing is possible and that fighting back isn't vindictive, it's survival. I'm going to honor Robert's memory by protecting others the way he protected me. And I'm going to keep telling my story as many times as it takes, until every person who's being erased knows they have options. They have power. They have worth. Malcolm's unopened letter sits on the shelf. Maybe someday I'll be ready to read it. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear his apology, if that's what it contains. Maybe someday forgiveness will feel right instead of dangerous. But today isn't that day. Today I'm exactly where I need to be. In my purple chair, in my workshop, in my haven, surrounded by women who are learning the same lesson I learned. You can't erase someone who refuses to disappear. I pick up my needle and thread. There's a hem to finish. A woman who needs to feel powerful. A small act of service that connects me to every other small act that built this life I'm living now. Side, I hear laughter from the common room. Margaret's voice, loud and joyful, followed by Linda's cackle. The sound of women who found their voices again. That sound, that particular music of survival and hope and chosen family, is better than any verdict, any settlement, any revenge could ever be. I am Cynthia Freeman. I survived erasure. I reclaimed my dignity. I turned my pain into purpose. And I'm not done yet. Not by a long shot. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing my story. Now go tell yours. The world needs to hear it. Did you like my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed this story. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing more stories like this. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.